President Biden has blamed his poor debate performance last week on jet lag, telling reporters that he wasn't very smart to travel around the world a couple of times before the debate. The president's remarks come amid panic inside the Democratic Party over his age and mental fitness. A congressman from Texas has become the first sitting Democratic lawmaker to call for him to step aside following the debate. Mr. Biden is expected to meet governors and leaders in Congress tonight. Let's speak to our North America correspondent, Nomia Iqbal. Nomia, so the fallout from the debate last week continues, the latest with the president saying that it was now down to jet lag.
Yeah, I mean, originally we were told that he had a cold. Now he is saying that he had jet lag. He had travelled abroad. He was working over different time zones, and so he said when he came to the debate, he was tired. But I think it's important to point out that he came back with a fortnight to sort of prepare for the debate. We were told he was spending a week before the debate at Camp David prepping for it. So his comments haven't quelled any of the concern whatsoever. You mentioned there this meeting that he's holding with governors later today. He's expected to speak to allies and donors to reassure them that he is perfectly capable of being the Democratic Party's presidential candidate. But it's, again, not really pushing back some of the criticism. And apart from Lloyd Doggett, we've also seen very high-profile Democratic members of the party, such as the former US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Jamie Raskin, Jim Clyburn. These are people who are very, very close to President Biden, who, whilst they haven't called for him to step down, they have said it is legitimate to question his mental ability, his fitness, and so forth. And I think the fact that they're even saying that rather than, just coming out and completely standing firm with him is probably a sign of something. However, in order for President Biden to stand down and have someone else replace him, he has to want to do that. And so far, he has indicated he's not going to.
Yeah, Nomia Iqbal, for the moment, thank you. Let's go now to Julia Manchester, who's in Washington. She is the political reporter at The Hill. Thank you, Julia, for joining us here on BBC News. How would you assess the feelings amongst the Democratic Party and the big hitters of the Democratic Party towards President Joe Biden?
Well, right now it's one of fear and trepidation going forward. They don't really know what's happening. I think there's also some frustration. In fact, later today, around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, President Biden is set to meet with a number of Democratic governors. And we also know that he's set to speak with congressional Democratic leaders. Now, this is notable because at least on the congressional Democratic leader front, this has been the first time President Biden has spoken to them since his debate performance. We know he's been in contact with a few Democratic governors, but there still is a lot of concern about how Democrats move forward after Thursday's debate performance. I don't think a number of Democrats were really expecting that. So they're nervous at this point, and you're starting to see cracks in their unified front with people like Lloyd Doggett calling on President Biden to step down, as well as other members like Congressman Jared Golden from Maine saying that he'll vote for Biden, but he thinks Trump is going to win.
You even Nancy Pelosi, known to be a close friend of Joe Biden, and saying it is a legitimate question as to whether this was some sort of incident or a condition. Is it significant, somebody like Nancy Pelosi coming out and sort of commenting in that way?
It's incredibly significant. And she also, called on, both of these candidates, not just Biden, but also Trump, to be sort of held to a standard when it comes to their age and their mental acuity. And, obviously Trump is only a few years younger than Biden, but the fact that she's mentioning this about President Biden is majorly significant because she's mentioning that there is a weakness there, a potential, detriment, not only to Democrats in the election, but potentially someone serving as president of the United States. I think it's also interesting that you have, other top Democrats, including James Clyburn from South Carolina, someone who is largely, to credit for Biden's win in the Democratic primary in 2020, he said that if it comes to it, he would endorse Kamala Harris and get behind her as the Democratic nominee. So the fact that they're even talking about that at this point shows how serious it is.
So just take us through this meeting this evening with the governors. How significant are they, and is the president going in an attempt to win them over?
This is a majorly significant meeting because we know that a number of these governors are from states that President Biden, desperately needs to win in order to get reelection. So in Michigan, for example, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she is someone to watch. President Biden is having issues in Michigan because there's so much discontent, in particular among the large Arab American population in the state over his handling of the Israel-Gaza war. In Pennsylvania, that's where, that's the swing state with the most electoral votes to grab. Josh Shapiro, the governor of that state, I'm told that he will be attending the meeting via Zoom today. And then, of course, there's other swing states like Wisconsin, the list goes on. So these are all states that President Biden needs to win. And I think there's concerns among Democratic governors, not only those who are running for reelection, but those down the ballot. For Congress and for Senate, et cetera, that they're going to be impacted by this as well.
Julia, really good to talk to you. Julia Manchester, political reporter at The Hill. Thank you for speaking to us here on BBC News.